Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing a sequel of a book that I read before and reviewed previously. Now it's part of the Gentleman Bastard sequence, and it's the second book, and it's called Red Seas Under Red Skies. Difficult and impossible are cousins, often mistaken for one another, but with very little in common. Now this is my favorite quote from this book, and I think it completely sums up just the ambition and goals of the Gentleman Bastards, and really encapsulates them as a whole. So I wanted to kick off with that quote. So let's jump into the summary. So before I get too far in, I do want to say there will be some spoilers in this, not so much for this book, but for the book previously, which is The Lies of Locke Lamora. If you haven't read that book, please go back and read that, and then look at my first review before moving on to this one. So Locke and Jean are back, our two favorite characters, and this book is actually set 2 years after all of the adventures that we had in Comore. Now that book was amazing. It was full of intrigue. It was full of battles, wars, crossing, double crossing, triple crossing, and everything you could think of in between. I had an amazing time on that adventure. Now this adventure is no longer set in Comore due to all of the things that they did previously. They had to flee. So Locke Lamora and Jean Tannen, we find them in Tel Varrar. Tel Varrar is across the sea, and it's the main setting for this second book. But also, which was a fun surprise, a lot of the second book is set in the Sea of Brass, which I believe is the sea and ocean surrounding Tel Varrar. So Tel Varrar is set up in a way where there are three main powers. The first power is the Priory. So the Priory essentially are, they're like merchants, and the wealthiest merchants, the wealthiest artificers, and those people of that caliber. I believe that they are elected, but I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they have official power, though, in this area. Now, Tel Varrar is very much a making and services area, meaning that it is full of potters, it's full of armorers, it's full of alchemists, and these people essentially elect the Priory, to govern across the whole of Tel Varrar. So the second power in this book is the Archon. Now, the Archon was given power during wartime because the Priory did not know how to command men. They weren't military people and therefore not generals. So they needed somebody who could repel Comore during the war. I believe it's the 1,000-day war they had. But then also pirates and other nations looking to encroach on Tel Varrar and take away its profitability. So they elected the Archon. Now, the Archon, as so many people do when they're given power during emergency circumstances, never gave it back. So he is official and he does have power, and him and the Priory are really, they're not at battle with each other, but they both know the other would be pleased if they no longer existed. So they're constantly wary and constantly trying to get a purchase hold, and the whole point of a good levy and a good purchase hold is to use it to get another one. So in a way, they are kind of at battle with each other on the lowdown. The third big power in Tel Varrar is the Requiem. Now, he's spelled Requuim. So it might be Requiem, but I'm going to call him Requiem. Now, Requiem came to power, and he actually owns this huge Elder Glass building called the Sin Spire, and it has 9 levels. It's a massive casino, and I think the name's Sin Spire, so to sin and a large spire, I think it was a really cool name for it. And in this Sin Spire that he owns, each level, you will find people where they're more influential, they have more money, and due to the fact that those games have a higher limit, up the casino. So it's it spells for a really interesting setting for a lot of the book. Now, Requiem, not only does he own the casino, which would give you a lot of sway anyway, because it's a huge economic factor in any city, he also is the head of the crime syndicate for this area, Tel Varrar. So he has a lot of unofficial power. He wasn't voted there, but anyone from the Priory and anybody from the Archon all the way down his subordinates knows that if you want power, you need Requiem in your keep and in your pay for you to be successful. Another thing which gives him a bit of an edge is he owns this impregnable casino vault. which I'll move on to in a minute, but impregnable casino vault. And inside that casino vault, he has obviously enough to cover the casino, obviously enough for enough space to look after all of his things, but a lot of the Priory trust him to look after their wealth as well, creating a special bond and relationship between these two powers in Tel Varrar. So the scene is set for our book, and I did say impregnable vault. Now, considering that is a Gentleman Bastard book, and obviously the crimes, capers, and all these types of things are what they are focused on. They want to be cleverer and richer than anyone else. An impregnable vault is something that they obviously can't pass up. So when we meet our characters again for the first time, they are playing in the casino, obviously with some kind of scheme at hand. Now, the majority of the first half of the book takes place in Tel Varrar, and as far as we know, their goal is to impregnate this vault and take everything from Requiem, which is exciting. However, the second half of this book actually moves away from the casinos in Tel Varrar, and due to some crossing, double crossing, backstabbing, and a million things in between that I can't say without ruining any of the book, they actually end up on a voyage that is really important and directly relates to this overall plan. And that's as much of the summary I can give you without giving anything away. Though, actually, no, one last thing I do want to mention is some unsavory characters who was some of his nemesis previously do show up in this book. They're not a major factor in there, but they do bring a little bit of extra spice to this book as well. Moving into things I loved and things I didn't that I did dislike. So things that I loved, first of all, was maps. Now, I'm not crazy. I don't just love reading maps, but when they come at the front of a fantasy book, it's so useful. Because in fantasy, especially if it's high fantasy, this is like borderline high fantasy, there's so many names of places, there's so many areas, locations, and relationships between political parties and traveling around that it's really hard just to grasp inside of your head. So for me, when they have maps in the front of the book, it's so useful because it allows you to stop if there's a new area being mentioned, or if they're just traveling through places and you're like, oh, how does this relate? You can look at the maps. So I'm going to show you what I mean right here. So first of all, we have hopefully you can see this. First of all, we have an in-depth look at Tel Varrar. Now, Tel Varrar is kind of in like the shape of a compass, which I thought was cool, and it has all these different islands, and each island really has its own use. One is for the Archon, one has the Priory, one is for artificers, one is for alchemists, one is for Requiem and his Sinspire. So it was pretty useful as a plot point to me to be able to be like, oh, they're on this island now, this island now, this island now, this island now, and I can really try to understand, well, which characters are you interacting with, because there's hundreds and hundreds of named characters in this series, which is a bonus. The second map that's in here is really more geared towards the second half of the book where they're going to be sailing. It shows the Ghostwind Isles and some of the local Port Prodigal places where they're going to sail to, so you can have A, an understanding of the scale of the voyage, but B, just an understanding of what's around and what's going on. Another thing that Scott Lynch did that I really love in this book was he added new dynamics. Now, I would say the main love story of this series so far, from having read 2 books, is really the one between Locke and Jean. Their friendship is so beautiful. It's amazing. There's so many smiling and heartwarming and obviously heartbreaking moments as well. And their relationship really makes me want to just call my friends and talk to them about old times and the things we did as well. However, that relationship is not so much called into question, but really has to develop and has to evolve, because love interests are introduced during this book. So they are introduced in a way that they flit in and out of the story, but in a way where Locke and Jean do have to address, well, how would this make a difference to our relationship? And I thought that was an awesome evolution of that relationship in this book. My third big love from this book was pirates. How can you not love pirates? Everybody loves a bit of a swashbuckler. And the second half of this book had a lot of swashbuckling. And I think it really gives... I just want to give props to Scott Lynch. It shows that either, or maybe both, either he did a huge amount of research for this book, obviously would have had to visit ships and understand them inside and out to be able to write it in the level of attention to detail and as vividly as he did, so that I could imagine it. But the second thing really is just his versatility. I've read some novels and some fantasy books where it's entirely set on boats, and that was like, not their gimmick, but like genre, I suppose, was sea fantasy. But he has managed to put that adventure inside of an overarching and bigger one, which I have so much respect for, because I wasn't expecting to go on a pirate adventure. So that moves me on to the fourth thing that I loved about this book. And the fourth thing was casinos. One of my favorite movies is Casino Royale. It's a James Bond movie. And what I love about it is it's so suave with the suits and the smoke in the air and the drinks, the martinis, shaken not stirred, but also just the mental games, the high stakes of it all. And for me, when I was reading a lot of the Sinspire, which is the big casino scenes in the book, I could imagine the Bond theme music and the high stakes, and really just got into that whole aspect of the book, and I absolutely loved it. And I think that's a really good thing, that that's what a book should do. A book should take you on an adventure. And in this one adventure of 700 pages, I was a pirate, and I went on the high seas, and went through battles and storms and beasts and animals, which was amazing. But I also was a suave casino player, playing for high stakes with the nobles, and rubbing shoulders with the most influential, powerful, and rich people in Tel Varad, which is amazing to have both of those experiences, plus, you know, all the other ones you get with Gentleman Bastard novel in one book. So this is the part of the video that I wanted to get a bit better at, and it was my dislikes. So I had to think long and hard. For me, the second quarter or so of the book, which I would say is maybe 100 pages, no, probably closer to like 150, 200 pages, because there were so many interested parties in the book. Obviously you have 3 plus 4 plus what the Gentleman Bastards want. For them to set up the second half of the book, a lot of double crossing, plot changes, setup, and those types of things needed to happen in that second quarter, because the first quarter caught us up with what happened before and set out what their game plan was, and then the third and fourth quarter was really, you know, the meat of the adventure. And of course things changed during that period as well, but to set that up so with so many complicated things and all ends tied, it was a little bit disheartening to read, due to the fact that it is exciting when things change really quickly, a lot in one small period, but it also, as a reader, I also would like to know what to get excited about, and I want to be able to invest in the adventure and get excited about the story. But during that section of the book, it was frustrating because I didn't know what to get excited about, what to invest in, what I could like try to envision and plan when I wasn't reading, and being like, okay, well, what's going to happen next? And that took a little bit of the fun away. So although I understand it is really important, and Scott Lynch's writing is so complex, like the plot is so complex, that I'm sure it's super necessary, and he probably went back and edited that bit so much to make sure that nothing didn't make sense later on. But as a reader, I kind of need to know where we're going, what we're doing, and just have some kind of plot to invest in, essentially. The second thing that I was a little disappointed about was there was no real magic. There were a few things. There was some magic in the ocean, magical creatures, 1 or 2 magical items, and a slight mention of the Bonds Mage, I think. But yeah, I thought we were going to develop and grow the magic system, and what the magical world is all about in this world and in this sequence. Now, I'm not super disappointed, because the book was amazing either way, and there was so much to learn, but I did think I was going to see a bit more magic. My third dislike, I suppose, is, where is Sabitha? I have the paperback version, so I've read probably roughly 1,500 pages, and who is she? Where is she? Apparently there's this woman who Locke fell in love with in some capacity. She's his equal, and I want to meet this person who is able to put our main character, our swashbuckler, our casino goer, our crime champion and syndicate, our most confident person in the whole book, the smartest talker. He apparently is lusting or missing this woman, so she must be incredible. So I'm really excited to meet her, and I'm a bit disappointed in 1,500 pages we haven't. And there's been at least 10 mentions of her across the 2 books. So I'm excited to meet her, and I'm disappointed it wasn't this time round. My final, again, I'm going to say dislike, but it doesn't feel like a dislike. One of the deaths really broke my heart in this book, and if you want to comment and try and guess who, I'm sure you would be able to. Now, with this death, I knew for the plot to push forward in further books in the way it kind of has to, with the relationships that are already there, I knew that this relationship probably wouldn't last forever. but I was heartbroken when the death came about. I had to stop reading to go and process the death for at least, half an hour before I was able to come back and see where the book was going to be moving forwards to. So, my overall review. I'm going to give this book an 8.1. I believe that it's at least as good as the previous book. And I just overall really enjoyed it. Like, I love Scott Lynch's writing style. And like I said, although it does jump about a bit and sometimes it can be a lot to handle, like, it's amazing. It's not really a writing style I've seen anywhere else with the way he moves through time. And the only other person, I think I said this in the last book, who really has the same level of detail from what I've read is Patrick Rothfuss. And both these authors clearly go back and edit their work over and over and over again with a critical eye to make sure that it is nigh on perfect moving forward, so there's no plot holes, no issues, no difficulties. And I think that's so important because he obviously has complicated plots due to the crime aspect of things, sprinkling of magic, but also the fact that it jumps forwards and backwards in time. I would recommend this book to anybody, obviously after reading the first one as well. And what else? I think what this book does is it does take you on adventures, and I did touch on this earlier, but the fact that I was able to be, and great books do this, the fact that I was able to be on a pirate ship, having that adventure, and also in the casino, and also a master spy and conversationalist, like, that's incredible, and that's what books are all about. Like, it would be almost impossible for somebody to go and do with their life, in real life, to be a crime boss and to be a fraudster and to be running casino jobs and to be a master sailor. And that's why books are so amazing, is because it transports you to these places and your brain doesn't know the difference. While I'm reading the book, I am that person, and it's so enjoyable. And Scott Lynch, the level of detail really allows me to go on adventures with these books. The last thing I want to do is leave you with a quote, and I think this quote completely sums up The Gentleman Bastards. And the quote goes like this: "It is possible," said Locke with a sheepish grin, "that I have been too bold." And I love that quote because the entirety of the series so far, from what I've read, is them being way too bold. And oftentimes it doesn't pay off, and sometimes it does. And either way, it makes for amazing reading. So guys, again, I want to say thank you for your time. I hope that this has been either educational, fun to listen to, or just worth your time as well. So if it has been, please like and or subscribe and recommend to anybody else. If you have some books that you would like me to read and review and summary, then that would be amazing. I have about 4 books lined up that I've purchased. My next book I read will not be a fantasy book because I promised myself I wouldn't read 52 fantasy books back to back. So it's going to be either some kind of self-help book, or it's going to be a classic, or it's going to be something political, and then I'm going to go straight back to the third of these books as well, which I'm really looking forward to. Outside of that, many thanks for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.